All right, so describe what the Manhattan Project was, explain the success of the Manhattan Project, and the ending of World War II. All right, so I did talk a little bit about how there is a new movie coming out in July about Robert Oppenheimer, who was kind of leading the charge with the Manhattan Project, and pretty excited for it. Yeah. So how this changes the world forever. There you go. There you go. I'll give you some time, work on this. We'll move on. We'll talk about some of the decisions made by Truman, and we all know, obviously, what happens. You good? Oh, you sick? Oh man. All right, so let's go over this here real quick.
No, that's.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. What an entry.
You mailbox this morning.
Yeah,
Okay, because I put a bunch of paper.
I got them. Thank you.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, because I
Sorry
printed
about
them
that.
out.
Wi-Fi
But I just
issues.
want to make sure you don't have any of Mr. Fight.
Sorry about the Wi-Fi issues.
What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do?
Way to think on your toes.
Well,
All right, hey, quiet. Sorry, here you go.
These were available to everyone.
Oh.
Wait, they were in the cafeteria. You saw the
I
announcement.
did.
They were on the table in the cafeteria, available to everyone.
Yeah,
So if
I-
Wyatt didn't do it.
Know about that? Yeah.
I put a message on your
I
classroom.
finished it.
All right, hey, we are recording, so here we go.
Okay, so
No, you're good, you're good.
She borrowed it.
Manhattan Project, so describe it for us here. What's going on? What's going on? What is this project all about? How long was it kind of going for? Who was leading the charge? What was the test here? Take it. Go ahead, Chris.
It was, the making of the first two atomic, well, the first 5 atomic.
Good.
bombs. The first one was tested out in Mexico, where, there's people all the way out there, so.
All right, good job. So what was that test called?
Vocab.
What?
The Trinity Test?
Yeah, the Trinity Test. Yep, good job. All right, so the idea here was to try to come up with this super weapon, right? This weapon of mass destruction, and to do so in secrecy, right? So the idea here was to try to keep it quiet, right? Keep it away from any type of ears, especially Soviets. But guess what? The Soviets leaked it. They got some of that information and took it back home with them. Darn it! All right, so when it came to developing this weapon, we mentioned a little bit about some of these Nazi scientists that were captured after World War II, which we'll mention a little bit with Operation Paperclip, to try to take these scientists and help develop more of our space adventure. So when it comes to rocket technology, and we talked a little bit about jet planes towards the end of the war with the ME-262 and some of this technology that Germany had, but it was just a little late, right? So we mentioned a little bit about that and how this was helping create the U.S. this atomic weapon. Right? This was in development before the United States got involved in World War II. So when it came to trying to create this weapon, there's a lot of different areas throughout the country where they're trying to amass the resources for this weapon and, again, trying to keep it secrecy. And so we talked a little bit about Oppenheimer too, and how he was the head of the charge, head of development of this weapon, and really what was on his plate. So in New Mexico, they tested it with the Trinity Test. And what if it was a dud? What if it failed? What would happen to these scientists here? What would happen to these people that were involved? What?
Probably would be killed.
Yeah, probably would have been killed, right? Or maybe never seen the light of day again. Because it took so much time when it comes to expenses, resources, and got to think too with this war the way it was, if you get in the wrong hands, who knows how this would have went. So it was one of those things where it was kind of a lose-lose situation, if you think about it. Right, and Oppenheimer obviously was happy too with the explosion, but again, before it happened, what would occur? Would this bomb destroy the atmosphere or kill everybody on Earth? What would have happened? So there's a lot of what ifs, right? But luckily it tested successfully, and or it destroyed it. But with the Trinity Test, this was successful. It'll later lead to the droppings of the atomic bombs. What were the names of these atomic bombs called? On Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Matt.
Fat Man and Little Boy.
Fat Man and Little Boy, yeah, good job. Which would put an end to World War II. It took some time though, so we're going to talk here with Japan. They didn't want to give up right away. Right? So yeah, we had a few other bombs ready to go, but at the same time, right, we were limited to what we had. So if they would continue to fight, well, who knows what would occur. So on Friday, you read about some of these decisions that needed to be made, right? And what was going to occur here when it came to invasion, like Operation Downfall. We had to invade the island of the mainland of Japan. How many casualties, how many deaths would have passed from this? So maybe drop the atomic weapons for the right choice. Connor, what's up?
So how do they choose what to name the operation? Like, how do you go from Operation Downfall to Operation Paperclip? Like,
Good question. I don't know. I think it's just one guy. They like, yeah, okay. There.
No, I know how they do it. right?
Or like how Family Guy that like that big old gumball machine. They drop it. Oh, okay. This. This. Oh, there's a joke.
Yes.
No, they have someone close your
Fine,
eyes.
okay.
Spit in the room, the first thing they get. Operation.
Okay, what was it? Thanks for the question, but it's like, I don't know how do you want me to answer that one. Sorry. Okay. All right. So with Manhattan Project, this was successful and puts an end to World War II. So get out the assignment. Let's go over the decisions that needed to be made. There was 5 of them that Truman Had to go over. Oh boy, what a tough decision to make here. So option one. Well, let's look at the pros and cons. So you guys have this assignment done. Right? Yeah, sure. Okay. All right, so let's go over this here. Option one, read it for us. Let's go. Let's go. See, Connor, yes, go ahead.
US state, yeah, so,
All right, yep, good job. So read it for us.
I have the pros, it would end the war.
Passage
All the passage.
Yeah, dude, come on, man. What's going on here? Holy heck.
Most military planners were convinced the only way to end the war with Japan was an invasion of the homeland. However, the stakes would be high. Casualties to American soldiers were predicted to exceed 500,000 troops, more than had been lost in the entire war to date. Planners also feared the Japanese Bushido Code, or the idea that everyone will fight to the death to protect their homeland. American troops were to storm the beaches around the nation and sweep inland, taking cities and towns along the way. American and Japanese, both military and civilian casualties, would be high.
All right, good job. So we talked about the Battle of Okinawa and Iwo Jima and how these were two battles that was kind of lit as an example of what would occur if we tried to invade the mainland. And with that Bushido Code, the Japanese fight to the very end. So if we had to invade the mainland, you got to imagine all the civilians of the Japanese that would die, but the United States soldiers, right? So yeah, they're saying 500,000, but they're expecting more than that. Okay, way more than that. So with this invasion, it would be brutal. And when you look at the numbers, okay, we talked about that on Thursday, right? When it came to the deaths from the atomic weapons reaching about 100,000 combined for both Hiroshima and Nagasaki, leveling the cities. But in any case, it doesn't come up to the point of millions, right? They're predicting 10 million at least, right? Casualties and deaths if we invaded the island. So Operation Downfall. We'll see how they came up with that name. Connor will look it up, how they come up with the name of the operations. All right.
Sure.
So, okay, good. Yeah, what they say.
So the Pentagon gives like the military leaders two letters. So like for instance, AD or AA or whatever, and they have to come up with the two-syllable thing or two words that would like name it. So for instance, the thing that they would give was PC. So they came up with paper. That's how.
All right, thanks, Wyatt. Appreciate it. Okay, option two. Here we go. Who would like to read this? Wyatt, go ahead. Thanks.
Stalin promised Roosevelt and Lincoln Truman that the Soviet Union would declare war on Japan after Germany had been defeated. Until this time, the USSR was neutral in the conflict. Truman considered this option great. The entrance of the Soviet Union lessened the burden on the U.S. troops. The invasion of Japan would still have to be carried out, but Japan couldn't be invaded from both coasts and possibly end sooner. However, the U.S. did not support communism. Truman and Stalin were already at odds on how Germany should be divided. The U.S. had fought the Japanese for 4 long years. The Soviet Union gained valuable land and resources after only fighting for a few months. Truman did not want any more changes for communism to spread and possible resistance to democratic government.
All right, good. So with option two here, we're looking at the Soviet Union trying to help us out against Japan out in the Pacific. And we mentioned with the what conference, the second meeting between the big three, it happened right before the invasion of Berlin by the Soviets. What was it called? Chris, go ahead. The Alta Conference. Good job. And that was FDR's last meeting, right? And in that meeting, a lot of people, especially Truman, were a little upset with how they just granted a lot of this land to the Soviet Union, to Stalin. It's like, hey, all of Eastern Europe, it's yours. Well, can you down for that? Not really, right? Without the Soviet Union, who knows how this war would have went, how long it would have drug on, and who knows what the Third Reich maybe would have been around today still. So you got to give some of the land to them. And obviously, we know wherever they go, communism will follow. So if they enter the war over in Asia, and they'd be pushing in, obviously closer to China, Manchuria is located. Who knows if they invade on the island of Japan, communism will spread there. So you got to imagine. Okay, after the war, we'll talk later in your years here about the containment policies and how to try to contain communism from spreading. So we have a war literally right after World War II that occurs on the Korean Peninsula trying to prevent communism from spreading. That happens on the mainland of Japan. You can only imagine just the bloodshed that would ensue, what would happen. So yeah, right. This was maybe a pro to it. You know, it's like, hey, you know what? We can have help. The Soviet Union will help us defeat Japan. We don't have to use this nuclear weapon. But at the same time, well, a con to it, if the Soviets do enter the war, wherever they go, communism will follow. And here we are fighting this war for 4 long years. And they just jump in at the last minute, claim all this land. Really? Is that how that works? Well, if anything, you can see how that is a con to this decision. So yeah, the fear of communism spreading is already being determined, already a factor when it comes to these decisions. Okay, the Cold War is already starting, even before World War II is even over. All right, good. Is there any questions, pros and cons? I think we're good with that. Option 3. Let's see here. Parker, let's hear it.
Some suggested that Truman demonstrated the amount of power by dropping it at sea in Tokyo. The sheer power of the bomb might frighten the Japanese into surrendering without using it on the civilian populace. However, there were only 5 bombs. One was used to test in Mexico. There was no guarantee that the others would. What would happen if the demonstration proved a failure after a public boast by the United States of the secret? Many feared that the U.S. might appear desperate to end the war and give the Japanese new motivation to fight.
All right, good. So yeah, why don't we just set the bomb off way out in the Tokyo harbor just for everybody to see? Okay, so then we're not killing any civilians. We're not using it on a population. So this was kind of a way to show our power, and hopefully Japan just surrenders. They see the explosion, they're like, wow, okay, that is devastating. Right? Can you imagine that being dropped on a city? Well, it did. Okay. But anyway, so this was a way to try to prove, right, that this war could end with this bomb without even using it on the civilians. All right, so again, you can see the pro with that. All right, but the con to it, well, what if it's a dud? What if it doesn't work? We're embarrassed, and everything that we put out there for resources, materials, and creating this bomb, well, is all for nothing. And the Japanese would look at it and just like, wow, what a bluff. Okay, they played their card and it didn't work. And they're going to continue to fight even harder and harder to a point where the invasion would have to happen, right? So it's one of those things where maybe this decision wasn't the best. All right, option 4. Austin Heim, go ahead. Well, don't you have it on your iPad? Oh,
There's a seat there right here.
all right. Yeah, you know what? We could move you up there. What do you think?
Where, right here?
Oh, right up there, front row. Oh, okay.
Many around the world were wary of the portfolio. It was obvious that there's Japanese were going to look at the price to bring about their defeat would be high. The Japanese military was prepared to fight to its destruction. If a peace treaty could be signed between the U.S. and Japan, many American and Japanese lives could be saved, however, Japan still be in control of most of the Pacific. The American island hopping strategy had left many islands and people under the brutal rule of Japan. Ultimate victory and surrender was the only way to guarantee that these lands would be evacuated by Japan. It was also the only way to remove brutal militaristic criminals.
All right, good, good. So with this peace treaty, if we would have tried to negotiate it, well, Japan would have held on to the lands that they were at, right? What they already controlled out of the Pacific Ocean. And we talked a little bit about their brutality with the Chinese, even before this war started and continuing throughout this war, right? We also talked about the Bataan Death March, right? And how where they were in the Philippines, how brutal they were to the U.S. soldiers that were captured and the Filipino troops. So this was tough, right? If we just negotiate peace, well, the war's over, great. Okay, we don't have to risk any more lives of the Americans. We don't have to test the bomb, right? And this invasion of Operation Downfall wouldn't occur. But these lands would still be controlled by Japan, especially where the eastern coast of China would still be dominated by Japan. So yeah, I don't know what you think, right? When it comes to their control, their dominance, who knows? Their war would probably just continue on. Eventually, once they build up their numbers again, once they build the resources needed, who knows? They might launch another attack. Right? This would just be a never-ending process. So with the Tokyo war crimes, we will mention at the end of the war today, if we have some time. Probably not, though. With these crimes here, they will be placed on these Japanese officials, these generals that were leading the charge. Like, what was that guy's name? This military general that was kind of making all the decisions. This is way at the start of the chapter. Connor. Yeah, Hideki Tojo. Good. And we'll mention with these war crimes, the emperor, who is still a part of these decisions, just allowing Hideki Tojo to go through it, and he just kind of gives the stamp of approval. Well, nothing really happens to him, which is crazy to think about. So he's emperor all the way up until the late 1980s. Whoa. But anyway, the U.S. thought it was in the best interest to try to keep him around, to keep some sort of structure in Japan. as we're leading a different viewpoint, a different government system for the Japanese, as they're now a close ally, right? All right, so there you go. So what the pros, cons of it? Pros, well, it ends the war, right? Great, but at the same time, with the cons, that kind of outweighs it. Knowing that they're still around, knowing that maybe there might be another strike and attack on territories that the U.S. has out in Pacific. Who knows? Maybe another Pearl Harbor, so to speak, right? So, man, I don't know. I don't know what to think there. Option 5. All right, so this is what we used. Chris, go ahead. You want to read it?
Use the bomb for immediate end. The option that Trinity ultimately settled on was use the bomb for Charlie. Thought was by destroying Japanese U.S. states and immediate threat. Cities were selected for the military support, all firms and large civilian population, which would be accepted by. Bomb kills and broke U.S. states local affairs weapons. The option was to gate and invasion and save hundreds of thousands of Americans who would survive. Using the bomb could also give the United States upper hand in Europe, dealing with the Soviets. Stalin might be given more U.S.
All right, good job. So obviously we use this choice, right? This option here is what we go through. And this eliminates the invasion of the mainland of Japan. So when it comes to heavy, heavy casualties on the Japanese side, when it comes to civilians and U.S. soldiers invading the island, well, we're safe there. Right? I mentioned a little bit about how majority of us probably wouldn't be here if this invasion happened, if this occurred. Okay, it's something to note because the numbers would just be ridiculous, right, if this invasion happened. And at the same time, right, for dropping the atomic bombs, yeah, the numbers were high, close to 100,000, a little bit more than 100,000, but it doesn't come close to 10 million that was predicted if we invaded Japan. All right, so also one thing to note here with the Soviet Union, why not use this bomb and use it as leverage against the Soviet Union and Stalin? Right? Truman's realizing that maybe we gave him a little bit too much with the Yalta Conference. Maybe we gave him too much land. Again, you can't really argue with it, right? Because without the Soviet Union, who knows how that war in Europe would have went. So this was a way to try to negotiate a little bit more. We have a card to play against Stalin, as we're the only country in the world by 1945 that has this weapon. Right? Eventually, by 1949, the Soviets will get their hands on a nuclear weapon. This will start this arms race between the two. But until then, well, we hold all the cards. All right, so here are your terms. Again, we probably won't get too far into this, but we'll review it tomorrow. You got the Potsdam Conference, the Nuremberg trials, and the Tokyo War Crimes trials. Right, and this is the last conference between the big three. Right, these negotiations just end from here all the way up until, well, the Cuban Missile Crisis, where terms have to be met, or who knows, right? Armageddon, nuclear warfare. So again, you guys will talk about that later in the years here as it kind of goes through the U.S. perspective from here on out. I promise this is going to be it, though. We have 3 more. I think that's it. Done.
I think I like the one.
I think I threw it out.
Did you really?
I tried to give it to Wyatt. He didn't want it, so.
I don't know why you tried to.
I know, he didn't want
Did you
it.
say what a jerk?
Yeah.
I needed for Jackie.
Hey, zip
Oh,
it.
you're
Terms.
just gonna take it.
Great. Okay. You asked for it.
Come in.
Get your.
I scared you.
Okay. Pipsqueak. I'll send you over to Halifax so you can handle. Yeah, dude.
So skip it.
I was in New York City.
Skip it.
Okay.
Did you go to an arcade?
Yep, Dave and Buster's. It was awesome. I was thinking about Nick the whole time.
Free tickets.
50,000.
Oh, you didn't?
You got a PS5 with it. What do you say? You must go a lot to know.
Not even 150.
So,
Yeah, it's good back cave.
That's Gotham, dude.
some guy in a dark alley offered you see the real Batman.
Spider-Man took me a tour. I was on his back and we're swinging through the skyscrapers. It was pretty cool.
You soiled your panties while you were doing that.
What? What did you say?
Soiled your panties.
All right, so we'll continue on until the bell rings. Got 3 minutes. So
Eric.
Potsdam conference. What do we got? What do you have? So I already did a little bit about this. Connor, go ahead. Thanks.
It was like the last conference, that pretty much negotiated terms that World War II.
All right, good job. So we got Stalin, Soviet Union, Churchill, Great Britain. That stays the same. But who's now the president of the United States? Makes the decision, drop the bomb here, Paul. Truman, good. And this happens right before we drop the bomb on, obviously, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, right before World War II comes to a close in the Pacific Theater, obviously, ends the war. All right, and with Truman, he spills it out to Stalin. Make sure you guys know this. He spills it out and says, hey, we have an atomic weapon. We tested it, the Trinity Test, it worked. Right? We are going to use it on Japan. And he pretty much uses this as a trump card, right, as leverage to say, hey, these negotiations moving forward, they better sway in our direction. Right? It's not just you dictating what goes on. So Stalin, he didn't believe it. It's like, yeah, whatever. I don't believe it. There's no super weapon out there that you have, right? They're kind of developing it, but they weren't even close. So with Stalin, he didn't believe that this worked. He didn't believe that this was operational. So it was kind of these hard terms, and this is the last meeting that we have between the big three. Stalin's already seeing Truman as an enemy, right? This Cold War is already beginning, already started. But some other things that they mentioned was just really what they're going to talk about and just reassure everything with the all the conference. So dividing up Berlin, dividing up Germany, and obviously for the Eastern countries in Europe, right, that will belong to the Soviet Union as satellite states. All right, so you think about that war with Russia, Ukraine today. Well, a lot of it is because at one point Ukraine was a part of the Soviet bloc, and they believe that they have rightful control of it. So the Potsdam conference, they're just reassuring everything from the Yalta conference, dividing up Berlin, dividing up Germany. The Eastern states belong to the Soviet Union, and Truman saying, hey, we have a nuclear weapon. You guys got to stop reaching, right? You got to stop pushing communism around the world. Okay, the next target obviously is going to be Asia, which China eventually becomes a communist country. So with that, you can imagine already the tension rising. And with Truman, he's spilling it out to him. So we got this nuclear weapon, better back down. Okay, Stalin doesn't believe it. So then we end the war, right? And we prevent the Soviet Union from spreading further, right, in Asia, and preventing them to get on the mainland of Japan. So it ends the war right then and there. So that's why this conference is so important. And with talks between the Soviet Union and the United States, they just stop, they cease, right? And this doesn't happen, these communications, until JFK, until the 1960s when we have the Cuban Missile Crisis. So then we have to talk. Then we have to come to the table, which you guys know they put missiles in Cuba, which could target many of these key cities all throughout the United States. And we have missiles over in, obviously, Western Europe. All right, so we'll pick up there tomorrow. See you guys later. Have a good one. Take care. Yeah. kind of talked about already the plan for this week and next with finals, presentations. It's gonna be good stuff.